President Bill's first cabinet reshuffle in 2021 has seen some ministers out of the cabinet completely, while some have simply been transferred to different ministries. Now, three of the most high-profile dismissals were Professor Bakima as Minister of Technical and Higher Education, Dr. Dennis Sandi as Minister of Lands, Housing and Country Planning, and Professor Alpha Wuri as Health Minister. Comments on the replacement of the Lands Minister, Dr. Dennis Sandi, have gone viral on social media, mostly praising the President for his decision. The new Lands Minister, Dr. Turat Senesi, was, until his appointment, the Deputy Minister of Technical and Higher Education. Dr. Senesi's former boss, Professor Bakima, was dismissed from the Higher Education Ministry amid a long-running strike by university lecturers, causing further delays to the start of the academic year. The Higher Education Ministry is now to be led by Professor Alpha Tijan Wuri, former Health Minister who has been replaced by Dr. Dembi, a renowned US-based medical expert. Professor Wuri's dismissal has brought about lots of questions about his competence in the Health Ministry, with many trying to see reason in the President's decision to fire the Health Minister in the middle of a global pandemic. Tonight, we dig into possible reasons for the dismissals and whether their replacements would bring the required reforms the government seeks. I am Samuel Wise Bangura, and this is AYV on Sunday. And on my panel this evening, I have for 2018 presidential candidate and chairperson of the Unity Party, Femi Claudius Cole. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation.
All right, I have the press secretary and presidential spokesman, well now, lawyer Yusuf Koketoma Sandi. Congratulations and good having you here.
Thank you very much for having me, Samuel. Good evening, viewers, and thanks for having me.
And I have a good governance advocate, the former executive director for Campaign for Good Governance, Valnora Edwin. Good evening and welcome to the show. Good evening. And Happy New Year to you. I'm pretty sure this is the first appearance in 2021, all right. And of course, I'm pretty sure most of you have seen the flyer. You've seen lawyer Soisembe Mara on it, and unfortunately he will not be here tonight because of an emergency. He called the 11th hour, and he has always been here, and he always wishes to be here, but unfortunately tonight he will not be joining us. So you watching and listening, remember you can participate in the discussion through our Facebook page. You can find us at the Africa Young Voices Media Empire Facebook page, or alternatively, you can phone in and make your contributions when we open the call lines later. The number for those of us in Sierra Leone is 025-271-959. And if you're out of Sierra Leone, the number is +232 306 622-766, +232 30622-766. All right, I know we're here to discuss the cabinet reshuffle, but for the benefit of our sides, we know there is a topical issue that has to do with the Guinea, the border between Guinea and Sierra Leone and the Yenga saga. I'm going to take you on that. I know the president had a talk on that yesterday, and so where are we? Of course, there are talks about redeployment of Guinean troops on the Yenga issue, and the border is still closed, and the president feels that's a concern for Sierra Leone. Where are we?
Thank you once again for having me, Samuel. The Yenga issue has been ongoing for quite some time now. We remember, just a bit of background, that the Guinean troops first came to Yenga by 1998. The troops came in to help us with the war, and then by the end of the war in 2002, the then President Amatijan Kaba went to Guinea, and then you had Lansana Conte, and by 2004 they had a joint communique where they resolved that Yenga belonged to Sierra Leone, because when they came in to help us in the war, they never went back. So as a result of that, they have been occupying. So successive governments, the late President Kaba, former President Koma, you know, we have been doing a lot of diplomatic work. But what has been happening is that the border is being divided by a river called Malema River. So which basically happens is that the military guys will normally come, and then those in Yenga, who are our own people, they have been prevented from doing any economic activities. And that is really, really a problem. So what we have done is that since our government came to office, we have also been extending the diplomatic relations. The former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ali Kaba, started lots of diplomatic employee, went to Conakry, where in fact, at some point in time, they said they were going to withdraw all their troops and then they were going to hand back over to us, to Yenga. They failed to do that. We also had a new minister who has come in. So what is happening now is that what the president has done on Saturday is that we have escalated it to the Economic Authority of Heads of State. Now, at the meeting, what the president was saying was that Yenga belongs to us. We need Yenga. So it is non-negotiable. So we need to have our territory back. So now what it did was to call on the Authority of Heads of State to form a committee where they can resolve this matter once and for all, because that's the highest authority. So as a result of that, other heads of state were so overwhelmed and so moved by the passionate appeal he made. So the chairman, the current chairman of ECOWAS Heads of State, who is President Akufo-Addo of Ghana, immediately said they are going to institute what they refer to as a tripartite team, which will include the president of Niger, and also it will also include the president of ECOWAS Commission, and also himself as the chairman. They are going to meet in the next 2 weeks, and then they are going to try and resolve the matter. So I think it is something that we're all passionate about, and it's unfortunate that I've seen on social media, people are just mixing sarcasm, talking about military to go and defend. This is about being military defense. This is our land, and we need the land. And I think we have to be united for us to have this land. Because remember, Sierra Leoneans who occupy Yenga, who cannot do economic activity on Yenga, you know, it is something that we all very, very passionate. So when people talk about military, I think it's unfortunate. We should not mix sarcasm and patriotism. All of us should come together.
And talking about social media, let me take you on that. I've also seen posts where people are saying, oh, we have a soldier who is now a civilian, but he's a coward. I mean, he should just deploy people like you're saying. But what that would mean, and also the current decision of Guinea to close the border, redeploy military to Yenga, people have attributed that to, oh, the vice president was against Alpha Condé. And Alpha Condé is now, again, been re-elected. So that alone has soured the relationship. Is that anything to go by?
I think, like I always say, we do not run government by social media. People have different opinions, and they have right to their opinions. As a government, our policy is very clear. Yenga belongs to Sierra Leone, and we need Yenga back. And therefore, we are exploring diplomatic relations to have Yenga back. Now, of course, when people talk about using military, we have a former leader. This is a democratic leader now. And therefore, we have to use every diplomatic channel possible to have Yenga back. We also have to remember, Guinea and Liberia are closest neighbors. You cannot have any opera using the military with Guinea at this point in time, when we know there are chances for us to resolve this matter amicably. And obviously, as we go along, like I said to you, now ECOWAS heads of state are now interfering, having the tripartite team, which I think is the best thing for us to do. You also spoke about the border, about the blockage. It's not only Sierra Leone. Guinea is also bordering Senegal and other countries, and they have closed all those borders. So what they said at the ECOWAS heads of states meeting is that other heads of states are now complaining as well that the borders are being closed and it's affecting economic activities. So all of them are coming together to apply pressure on Guinea. And I think that going forward, we would have amicable settlement to all of this. And I think we do not have to use military. We do not have to use military because, you know, diplomacy is something that will forestall lots and lots of other challenges, you know. So as a government and as a president, well, yes, it was once a military officer, but now we are the diplomatic realm. Let's explore all the diplomatic options, and I think and I believe the ECOWAS heads of state are ready to solve this matter once and for all.
All right, let me ask you, as I have your bite on that, Keketoma is talking about the involvement and intervention of the ECOWAS heads of states now. But do you think the regional bloc has been very proactive in on issues like this, because it's been too long and we've not had anything from that bloc?
I think they could be a lot more proactive, because peace in West Africa is going to if there's destabilization in West Africa, it's going to negatively impact all of us. And as Keketoma says, and he's right, you cannot afford to have war with your neighbors, especially not at these times. And I think we should give diplomacy a chance. I think everybody has something at stake. And now that their elections are over, I think it might be a perfect time for them to be more amenable to negotiating a permanent settlement, because it's really negatively impacting trade.
All right, Valnora, let me have your take on this. What do you think this current bitter relationship, should I put it, between Sierra Leone and Guinea poses to both countries, especially Sierra Leone. And we have Sierra Leoneans like Keke Toma was saying, whose livelihood, economic activities have been seriously hampered as a result of the younger issue and the blockage.
I think it's a very unfortunate situation and endorse the view that it's going to affect our competitors who reside in that location. And it's also rather unfortunate that, you know, we are going back and forth on this issue. I do recall late President Kaba, that's when it started, and then, you know, there will be some negotiations, the troops will retreat, and then after a while they'll return. It happened during former President Koma, and then it's happening again. So I certainly think we need, now that the President had called in the heads of state, I read his speech, I think there will be, maybe this is something we need to sustain. It's going to be sustained engagement, so even when they withdraw, there has to be a further step beyond that, so it doesn't reoccur, because it does have certain ramifications. And you know, over the years I've always asked, what is in Yenga? Because when countries do start fighting, I mean, some of my colleagues have been there. In fact, we are planning to see if we have the resources, it's something some civil society colleagues who want to go there. Because whenever countries, you look at Azerbaijan and Armenia for that village, I mean, they're killing all the people. But then you start to ask, what's the value of that place? Why are the Guineans going back and forth on this Yenga thing? And so maybe taking all that into consideration should inform how the diplomatic discussion should go. And I think as Sierra Leoneans, we should know we cannot fight with our neighbors, and war and conflict is not a common thing. I think if they listen to President Biden's speech, he himself even said engagement with the terrorists has to be through dialogue. They've been in Afghanistan for 17, 18 years. They've not achieved anything other than killing innocent people than rectifying the situation. So I think even the global discourse and approach and posture now is more about dialogue. And I think one thing, Guinea for me is a big brother. I do recall the role they played in getting rid of the rebels in Cambia. We were having the reports at that time, oh, they are bombing Cambia, they are killing. But had they not intervened, Sierra Leone would not have been able to retrieve Cambia. So they have a big brother role to play, and I hope they are more responsible.
All right. Yes, quickly, go ahead.
So, added to all the diplomatic activities we are doing, very recently also a team went to Yenga, comprising the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Internal Affairs, and then the Ministry of Defense. So what the team is suggesting that we do is that there are 3 things that we are going to do. One, we are going to do a very big, massive billboard to say Yenga belongs to Sierra Leone. And then the second thing is to mount our flag to make sure that they know that this is our land. And then lastly, we are going to do a solar light, so which means even at night, you know, this is our place. So what we are doing is to have incremental efforts to make sure that our Guinean counterparts, they understand that Yenga belongs to us and we need Yenga. So like Valera was saying, this issue about they coming in, they going out, disturbing our people, I think it's heart-rending when you have people in a certain land, they cannot do their economic activities, they cannot survive through their land. You know, it's pathetic. And us as Sierra Leoneans, we have to solidly support the government, the president, and also support the people who are there, that they have to start doing their economic activities.
All right. Let's go to the reason why we're here tonight. The first cabinet reshuffle in 2021. I'm going to start off with the Ministry of Higher and Technical Education. Professor Bakima was fired by the president, and his dismissal came at a time when the country, the sector is experiencing some difficulties. We've seen some long-running strike action with academic staff associations of different public universities, William Kokwing College, Saga, and all of that. Am I safe, or are Sierra Leoneans safe to attribute his sacking to some of those things?
Well, all I would say is that I often say this, and confidently, in fact, that we have the most successful government in under 3 years. And it's like when you have the best team, sometimes, you know, you as team manager, you sit, or you as the coach, you sit and say, okay, we need to have fresh players to come in, people with more experience, and people who have experience in different other areas of the government, you move them around, you know. Because at the end of the day, for me, I think government is about collective responsibility. Now, you also have to remember, for instance, with the issue of Professor Pakima, it took and started the ministry, which was a manifesto commitment. This was a ministry which started with about 3 people, the minister, the deputy, and then the permanent secretary. Now, they have a full structure. So it tells you that what started as a vision is now becoming an infrastructure and something that they can take to higher heights. And also, even in the area of technical and higher education, all those services has also done extremely well. But like, you know, the sector has challenges, you know, whether it strikes and other things. And we have somebody like Professor Alpha who is going there now, who is an academic, he has a background, he has been a lecturer for many, many, many years, you know. So it's almost like saying that his experience is also going to add more value. But like I always said, when you serve in public service, we have to commend people for that. Because, you know, it takes commitment, it takes passion, and it takes everything away from you. You leave your house in the morning just to come on the public service. And sometimes even the wages, what they pay people is not enough. So when they do their own service, I think we have to commend them. And when obviously the president, the constitution says people serve at his own discretion, when their time is up, they go, and then we commend them for what they've done. And those who are coming, we hope that they can also continue the good things that they have done. And where there are challenges, for instance, the issues about strikes, I think we have more dialogue, which I think is the way forward, so that we can have our students to continue uninterrupted educational service, which I think is very, very important.
Femi, it takes the president's prerogative to iron fire. I mean, but would the president be well pleased to fire a performing minister?
And you know, when I got the call to be invited to this show, I jumped at the opportunity. And I have one, that was my first question, is what is a reshuffle all about? Is a reshuffle based on performance, i.e., if there's a minister in a particular ministry that is performing, do you remove that person? Or do you encourage that person to take that ministry to another level? Now, and do you, so it was a dilemma for me, and I was glad for the opportunity, because let us really focus on education.
Yeah.
Being the president's flagship program, I do not believe if there's a minister there that is performing in a flagship program that you would remove. But as a parent and as people, as one who has students, I listen to the students at the colleges, not just IPAM, not just Fobe College, other colleges. And the things that they were crying about 5 years ago, they're still crying about today. So, and in the beginning, I wondered what was the logic of separating these ministries into 2? Initially, I thought it was just making the government too large, and I didn't see the sense in it. But going on, I thought, well, let us see. Maybe this is going to be a perfect opportunity to take higher education to another level. But what we have seen is complete inefficiency. The problems that were there before are now compounded. Today, I was talking to students of IPAM who tells me she leaves her house at 6 a.m. so she can have a space to sit in the auditorium of 700 students. And not only that, she then tells me that exams that they took in March, they still do not have results for. That people are then going to a year which they do not know if they've made it to. So there will be people from first year now sitting in second year. That tells me that something is very wrong with
no
the
results.
system. With the whole system. So in the case of education, I think there is a big expectation on Dr. Wuri that he's entering an arena where we're focused on. We're all really focused on. And we have, imagine 700 students all paying fees. They're all fee-paying students, at least the bulk of them. How are they learning? How are they having missing grades? How are the students, that particular student whose parents pay for computer studies has never touched a computer. So I think there's a huge gap in the Ministry of Higher Education. And we're looking, and I think the minister was gotten rid of for poor performance. The evidence is clear and it is glaring. So there's a responsibility on Dr. Wuri, a huge one.
I'll come to the responsibility of Dr. Wuri. Let me bring in Valnora. As as Femi is saying, now Valnora, let's look at the reason. Well, we're just trying to, hypothetically speaking, giving reasons as to why Professor Yagbakima was fired by President Bio. Femi just mentioned something that is very critical about students paying for even computers that they've never touched. I think my previous edition, I had the president for the Students' Union government at the at Commerce, one of the free constituent colleges of the University of Sierra Leone, and he mentioned that even identification of students at universities are not being given, and they are paying for all of those things. So the structures in our public universities are not, I mean, we are not proud of them. And you have Limcook, you have about 2,000 students who feel they've been kicked out of a university because of a poor decision that was made by the government of Sierra Leone, not necessarily APC or SLPP, but by the government of Sierra Leone, and they feel and they feel that the government is not taking active steps to actually bring them back on board, and their future is just is crumbling right in front of them. You also have the lecturers from all public universities. They've been calling since 2011, almost a decade now. Their demands have not been met, and the sector is just chaotic, so to speak. So, kicking away Professor Bakima and bringing in Professor Alpha Wuri, is it timely?
I think, firstly, we need to understand what's the role of a cabinet. And probably what determines how you select your ministers. And so, you know, there are various descriptions or definitions of what is a cabinet or the ministers. And one would be they're responsible to advise the president on government matters. So if we're talking about education, they have to be persons who have the capacity, whether maybe technical or wise or experience, to be able to advise the president on their sector or the portfolio which they hold. And they should be people that the president trusts and know that they can handle that role. So it comes back to the point that if education is the flagship, what was the determinant factor for the appointment of the erstwhile minister? And unfortunately, we never know the reason for appointing certain people. And of course, we keep on speculating as to why they were dismissed. We are never informed. But I would think that, you know, sometimes what creates the problem is the politics around all of this. Whether you select people based on party affiliation, on those who give more funds during the elections, on people with a technical and maybe practical experience, or sometimes we misjudge people at times, whether they have the capacity. You never know until you give them a try. So if the consideration is not necessarily on merit, on experience, that this individual, in as much as they might have been in education, but has the practical experience, looking at the grave issues that surround the educational sector, where the president has been doing really move us further from that place where we were. I think a couple of, maybe a year or so, we also had a discussion around education, about what the issue was. We're looking at government's priorities. Last year, the beginning of last year, just as we were sitting here. And we were raising some of these issues, and some of the viewers, in my view, were taking a particular stance. I have kids, they're going to school in Sierra Leone. So obviously, I want the educational sector
to be good.
There are areas, I mean, the policy, when you look at the policy document, good. But when you look at where we have been, and where we are now, and where we were, and what we want to achieve, we're still a long way off. And we need to draw attention those areas that are still challenging in order to improve. And one of the ways we can rectify the educational system, it depends on the people who have been appointed into this one. And we are not sure whether Dr. Alpha Wuri is even the best person, because I think we recall when he was in the Ministry of Education, I think that is where we started the problem. So we are hoping that maybe because he's had the experience and he would have seen what has happened over the years, he has time to sit back and review. Maybe he would have better ideas, because they are the ones who are supposed to advise the president. They are the ones who are supposed to have the experience, whether technical or practical, to ensure that the government policy is adequately implemented. And when they're doing all of that, I think we need to look at where we are. I had a niece, she's completed now at IFAM, but she used to tell me the same, that I have to be there around 6:30, not even wake up at 6. She's there at 6:30, and that's what, like 3-4 years ago, to be able to have a seat. So the first thing I thought about, firstly, they'll start sleeping well to this class starting, and two, how can you lecture so many people?
Exactly.
Paying attention. How do you have, and when you go to university, it's supposed to be interactive, it's not about notes. And you need people to contribute, but when you have and it's not a seminar, it's the normal lectures.
Yes.
So these are some of the very practical things. What sort of policies you have to put in place, what's the sort of manpower you need, what's the sort of vision and drive the individual leading that ministry have to ensure that in the next 2 years we're not going to resolve that. It's not going to be resolved in the lifetime of the first term of any president. But we need to set the roots, we need to plant the roots now, and in the next 10-15 years we'll be able to start building.
So Keke, it appears that particular sector is seriously challenged, because the challenges appear to be unsurmountable. Can we surmount them with Professor Alpha Wuri now? He was entrusted with that particular sector when we were coming from the war. Come and build the suburb education and things like that. And then we saw a situation where the late Dr. Minkai Luba took over under the previous regime, and he wrote a letter to the registrar of the University of Sierra Leone. In his own words, education is in a sorry state of affairs. That particular letter, I challenged the then government that it spoke to the situation and the current state of education at that time. That, of course, if the minister was saying that, it means we're nowhere. And now we saw where this current regime took over, separated the ministries. Professor Bakima, it appears he did not perform, so he has been asked to step aside. Let's bring in Professor Alpha Wuri again, who has had the experience coming from the war, building that sector and laying a foundation. Do you have trust? I know the president does have trust in him for speaking to the fact that he appointed him to serve in that. But what are the expectations at this point in time from him?
Well, in the first place, the only reason why we want to address those challenges, that is why President separated basic and secondary education and then higher education. That was the vision, because we know the sector is enormous, and therefore the only way we can start to address those issues is by having a separate ministry for higher education and basic education. That is one. Secondly, with the greater respect, Madam Cole, it is simplistic to think that if a lady wakes up at 7 o'clock in the morning just to go for class of 700 people, that means it's inefficiency on the minister. Because the whole point is this: the infrastructure of Roby College or IPAM, it's not going to change overnight. Now, there are two issues. One, there is access. Two, there is quality. Is it something that we should be proud of, that we are increasing access to education? Yes. Then you look at the infrastructure. Is this something we have to do to make sure we have more classrooms, we have more competent and quality lecturers to be in the classes? Of course we have to do, and it's always a work in progress. But then when you look at the whole infrastructure on the institution of Roby College or IPAM, what you realize that it's higher and technical education. So sometimes we focus too much on the higher education, because part of also what Professor Pakima did was as well that he did extremely well in the technical vocational education area. Because as I speak to you, there are 10 technical and vocational institutions fully functional across the country. which I think is something that we have to give him accolade for. Yes, there were challenges, and I believe with Professor Rui coming in, we will start to address those challenges. But to think that he performed badly because they have 700 students in one class, I think that is very simplistic. Vanora made the point. We're not going to expect to have a new government and everything is going to disappear overnight, because these are structural issues. Having more classrooms for Obe College, having more competent lecturers for Obe College, these are things that are going to happen not overnight, but over a period of time. But what we are saying is this, that you have a commitment from a government who has prioritized higher education by having a separate ministry. That is one. And secondly, yes, there have been strikes. Yes, we have obstructed the cycle of the students. It's unfortunate, but we know that we also appeal to our lecturers to show understanding. Because, for instance, when lecturers are calling for 100% increment, something we should have said years ago, it is not automatically by this government, less than 3 years in office, everything is going to change to be rosy. So all sides, all stakeholders have to understand that our commitment have to be to the students, but also to make education more accessible and improve the quality. There are always concerns. If you have, like Madam Cole said, a class of 700, 500 students, it's concerning. But that is not the fault of the government. What we are doing is to make sure that, A, we drive the vision forward. B, is to make sure, how do we make sure we improve on the infrastructure? To have, whether it's more classrooms, more annex buildings, to have, so you're also saying that somebody is paying fee for computer class that they are not taking computer lesson. That obviously is an issue that have to be addressed. But then, part of what you have also done is to make sure that students who are going to university, once they are doing STEM programs, they have free education. Is that not something that is good? You know, so there are definitely challenges, but there are things that Professor Pakima has done over the period that he has been there, which we must commend him for. So I think, to write him off that because 700 students are in one class, therefore it was inefficient or government is competent, I think that's very simplistic.
I see Femi wants to come in. Quickly.
And I was just giving just the tip of the iceberg in giving an assessment that you have 700 children. Now, I make it my business to really talk to students, to find out what exactly their challenges are. And there are many. All I just highlighted was one. Now, if we're going into deeper detail, if there are 700 students in a class, as Valnora was saying, how much quality is there present in that lecture theater? If a student has to leave the house or be at school for 6 a.m., by the end of the school day, they're not at their best. There are some who stand throughout the entire lecture are standing. You cannot tell me that that is portraying quality. And not only that, there are some problems which are going to be resolved over time. And there are some problems which are urgent. If quality education is the flagship program, some issues are urgent that should be addressed. Why on earth should students be paying for computer classes that they don't take? Delete it from their bills. Parents are struggling to make those payments in any case, so delete it. And there's a big one they have with missing grades. But if a teacher has to mark 700 question papers, and now, as I understand it, they don't even grade those papers. Those papers are graded like outsourced, where either former students grade these papers. They grade 100, and they get paid for 50. So if you have that chain where the lecturer doesn't get to really know the student, as Valnora is saying, it's an interactive process. But if you have so many students, you automatically are going to reduce the quality. And students' grades are they're always having issues of missing grades.
Okay.
And you're looking at, you're saying access. Access is good. So what are we saying? Do we want to have 1 million students graduate from college who graduate missing a whole chunk of their education? So are we looking at numbers purely against quality? I mean, there has to be a fine balance.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Let me take, Yusuf, let me have your bite on this again quickly. Now Professor Urui has been taken from the health ministry to the higher and technical education. We are in the middle of a war, a pandemic. And the other day I heard you here with lawyer Augustine Marab. He was asking no commander-in-chief would fire his general in the middle of a war if that general is actually doing what it takes to win the war. So, so it appears, if we're to go by that analogy, that we are losing the war under Professor Alpha Wui, and now we are taking him to another very challenging and critical sector.
Again, I hate to say this, but that is a simplistic way of saying it. Because for one reason, it has been under the leadership of Professor Alpha Wui that Sierra Leone has been rated as one of 4 countries in Africa with low rates in the first wave of COVID. Now, under Professor Alpha Wui, we know we've increased the health budget from a single digit to double digit. Under Professor Alpha Wui, we've recruited thousands of nurses. We've improved on the infrastructure in terms of hospitals, in terms of other facilities. In fact, just on Friday, we have just turned the sword for 150-bed facility of health facility and a village that we are going to have. So the issue is very simple. He has done his own bit. We had COVID, which was a pandemic. It affected us. And then we had a leadership from the president who moved and make sure we are proactive, but also we had support mechanisms for which Alpha Wui was part of it. So he has done his own bit. But again, like I've always said, you have a very powerful and good team. What we are now saying is to make sure that people who also have experiences in other sectors, they can now go and give value and the experiences to other those sectors. And then we then see who is coming. Dr. Austin Demby. Somebody is a renowned virologist, a renowned epidemiologist, somebody who has worked in many countries in terms of their health infrastructure. So what I'm saying is that you have somebody who is coming to take over and continue to build on the infrastructure Dr. Alpha Wui is left. He is not leaving because he has failed. He is leaving because the president believes that his experience is now demanding in another sector, and therefore he wants to go and share that experience in another sector. But what he has done is something remarkable, and it's something all of us should be proud for. Because, for instance, when the COVID started, all of us knew the way the proactiveness of the government, what we instituted, it was far different from when we had the Ebola. You know, we have got praises from WHO, many institutions. Even the lady who came from African Peer Review, he referred to presidents as the shining star in the fight against COVID. It is because you had support systems like the minister, the NACOVAC, which we are also supporting the process. So Dr. Alpha is moving, but he has left a good legacy, a good platform for which Dr. Demby, who is very renowned, is going to continue. Okay. And we hope that will obviously give an impetus to the new sector.
Valora, Professor Wui was winning. I mean, he has done great work in that ministry, well, in the health sector precisely in this country. But the president feels, according to Keke, I mean, his experience should now be taken to the Ministry of Higher and Technical Education, leaving us in the middle of this war.
So we're talking about doing an appraisal, and I know the ministers do sign performance contracts. So we'll continue to speculate because unfortunately we are not privy to the performance contracts, and we're not usually told why they move. So we need to be bouncing back and forth as to reasons why we think they move. And when you do an appraisal, you will find that an individual would have sometimes exceptional qualities in certain areas and weak in other areas. And you might think they might better function in other areas because of that weakness, and because they've shown some levels of expertise in other areas. So you might think, okay, they have some weakness there, but the strength they have counters that, and therefore I think they can best perform if I move them to this other position. Because it is always very unlikely for somebody, when you do an appraisal, if they are above average, for you to think you need to move them to somewhere else. The best you can do is, yes, they can give support because of some qualities they show. They can give support to others who are weaker. But I do believe within the cabinet or within the ministries, there's always that cross coordination. They have committees, they have sectoral units. So, I mean, the ministry do not stand in isolation. Everyone needs to support, and some of them are good friends. So it's just about picking up the phone like, you know, I need your advice, I need your help in this area. So even if it's in terms of boosting up, that relationship is there, and it could happen behind the scenes without it. So we will still speculate that there was something missing somewhere, and the president, as they usually like saying in his wisdom, is thinking, I think there's a weakness somewhere, and I think I need to move Professor Alpha Wigi to somewhere else where I'm hoping he can perform better.
Femi, I know this is your sector, the health sector. so let's look at Professor Wugi's performance in that sector, and maybe he has done tremendously well. And so,
and you know, yes, let us look at from the perspective of the people of Sierra Leone. You notice about us in this country, especially those from the president's office, are always stressing on his international numbers and records. But we also learned from the auditor's report that NACOVAC was not on the ball. They were collecting salaries 126 days before they actually got their act together. And we look at the complaints and the situations that we had at the onset of COVID-19, where we were congratulating ourselves and giving ourselves high five that Sierra Leone has had 0 case. And then we went from 0 case and went straight up. So let us not, and if we look at how did COVID and the measures that were taken impact the people, we can see that there were many balls that were dropped. There were issues with the doctors, even their payments and their allowances and their risk payments. There were issues along those lines. And if we're talking about putting square pegs in square holes, why wasn't Dembi invited in 2018? When you look at his CV, you know that this is the man for the job. And one thing that Vanora said at the beginning, we don't know how appointments are made. Is it by who donates the highest, or who they all went to both school or whichever school together, whatever the criteria is, we don't know. But why do we always try to push square pegs into round holes? The people in quarantine homes were crying, they were complaining. Those on the front line had a lot of issues and complaints. And even today, we see patients complaining and they want to be discharged from some of our government facilities. They say some hospital now they go for go die. So, and it's one thing, I love it when they quote they've hired 5,000 nurses. Some of these nurses have not been at the bedside for maybe 10 years. They haven't had a PIN code. Has there been training? Are we training them? Are we preparing them to enter into the health field? Because when we recently interviewed for nurses, I was shocked at the gaps in their education. So it's one thing to just gather all 5,000 nurses and give them all PIN codes. It's another thing to really monitor their continuing education. Are they ready to be at the bedside? Have there been measures put in place to make sure that we're not just inviting everybody to take care of the sick, where people then perceive that they simply go there to die? And even when we're saying that certain elements of our health system are free for mothers and young children, but you listen to those who have just had that experience, they don't figure it out to be free. They're still paying for a lot of stuff out of their own pockets. So how one measures the performance of a minister in a ministry, I think we should see the impact on the people of Sierra Leone. That the people begin to say, I mean, not they go private too. Me before that, I go government. At least I go to a government hospital. No, they send you for your lab tests to a private lab. They send you for your X-rays to a private lab. They send you for your dialysis to a private lab. And there we have a minister who is so fair with these things. So performance, I think, let us really talk to the people. Let us leave the WHO and the UN and the UNDPs to really assess us.
I want to come back to Keke. I mean, the issue, Valnora and yourself, the issue you've raised that has to do with appointments. I know there's this talk about when a president in Africa wants to appoint He practices the democracy of compliments and not competence, where you have to get people to serve in positions based on their competence, as against giving them complimentary things in positions. And so how do we get these guys? Now, Femi is saying, if you take a look at Dr. Dembi's resume, he is perfect. He is the man for the job. But where has he been? Why has he not been called earlier?
Just before I say something on
Go ahead.
I also want to go back with respect, madam. You talk about, let's not talk about WHO, international statistics and this, but these are the parameters with which all countries in the world are measured. So except if you want Sierra Leone to be in Jupiter, or somewhere you think that we don't use statistics and no data, but you need the data. So I'll give you another one which you don't want to hear about. So the 2019 Sierra Leone Demographic and Health Survey, what have they said? Now, when we came to power, because government, we invested so much money into the health sector. Now, as I speak to you now, we have got 32% improvement in maternal mobility. That means about women who obviously going to give birth. We have also got 22% improvement in child mortality. These are the statistics which other countries are proud of. Yes, there are challenges. You go to hospitals, for instance, the other day someone was saying, it went to Connaught, there were issues about oxygen, there are hospitals where you go about drugs. There are challenges. But again, I always say this, you cannot expect everything to miraculously change overnight because there are structural problems, there are structural issues. What we have done is to make sure, is to show the people of this country that we have got the willingness, the vision, the policies and the competent people to move the process forward. As we go along, we can be scrutinized, which is, there's no problem with that. But what we are saying is that what Professor Alfari has done, yes, in the midst of all the challenges, he also spoke about people in some centers, they are complaining, yes, all over the world, even in the Great United States, they have challenges in fighting COVID, even in the UK, all over the world. But our country, Sierra Leone, is being commended because of how we have fought the fight. And now when they even make references, we are ahead of even the United States of America because of our tests that we are doing. So we have to commend ourselves. And then, after commending ourselves, we look at how can we address those challenges. But I understand, if somebody is in a place where your test result is not coming, you have issues with food coming in for you, of course those are concerning. But the great thing about our government is we are a listening government. If those issues are taken up, you have authorities who are ready to act and make sure that make a difference. So what we are saying is that we are progressing. Yes, it is not. In Rwanda, it was not overnight. It was never overnight. But then we have shown people of this country that we have got the competence, the structures, and the vision of the president who is willing to move us along. And we always appeal that everybody should come along.
Can I interject?
Yes, please.
And you see, this is the disparity. Now, it is nice to be complimented. It has pleased whoever and whatever for whatever. But if you have a system that you want to change, say for example our health system, there has to be monitoring. It's not going to take 5 years for certain areas of our health system to radically change. You talk to patients. I am going to talk to the people of Sierra Leone and talk to patients about some of the issues that they find when they go to our government hospitals. Those are not things that we need even a large amount of money to change. Some of those are mindsets. Those are things of supervision, that nurses will go make a bed and be sleeping. That nurses in the morning will give the patients, or doctors do not round on their patients at all.
So am I safe to say that goes to the management in those centers?
Yes. So you have to, for it to work and for the people on the ground to get the benefits of it.
All right.
Okay, if you're saying that those things are not available and the patient has to go for surgery and they're forced to buy all those things, fine. But when the patient comes out of surgery, you have to make sure that the doctors are going to take care of these patients. The nurses are on the ball. They are well trained and well paid, and their conditions of service are conducive for them to take care of those patients well. You cannot say we're going to wait 5 years for somebody to say, I know they go Ghana for treatment, or they go Connaught.
Yes, please, come in. Yep.
I think when we are doing these assessments, there are various stages. And you have the stage that I think Kekatoma is coming from, which is the commitment, the infrastructure, probably the personnel, maybe in terms of the appointments, the legislation is there. That's one stage. And in a sense, it's a very fundamental stage. The powers that be, the government, the politicians need to have the commitment, because you need the political will. And the political will involves the resources. It involves the infrastructure. It involves opportunities for the personnel. That's one stage, and I think that's where he sits. I think where we are coming from is the reality on the ground, on the day-to-day interaction with the health sector. And I think when you even want to compare, I think maybe you have something to say about education. But honestly, the health sector is a very, very big challenge. Just last week, I was at Connaught. I went to visit a colleague who unfortunately passed off this morning. I mean, she passed off because there was a lot of complications. I don't think they could have done anything anyway. Not because of negligence, necessarily. But you should go, and I think you should encourage the president to make an unannounced visit to Connaught. And he would see what we as Sierra Leoneans need to face on a day-to-day. Just Connaught. We wouldn't say go to Cambia Hospital or Makeni Hospital or Koinadugu Government Hospital. First of all, at Connaught, the filth. I always have an eye for filth. And I always said, maybe because I'm tall, I always see the ceiling. You see the cobwebs. The place is filthy. Connaught had a beautiful garden, flowers well tended, neat and tidy chairs where people can sit outside if you're not supposed to be, or the patients can move around. The president really needs to make an unannounced visit to Connaught. Even your dog at home, I can assure you, you will not want to be in Connaught. We are not going to all the intricacies. And the second point I want to make in that, you know, appointing the ministers in one thing is one thing. I think 2 Sundays or so ago, I was in another media, and I was speaking about the president's New Year message. You are the people who write that for him, and I wanted to send a message to you. What was there is good, but I think there's one particular thing he needs to emphasize to all of us because of the state in which we find ourselves. What is our vision for 2021? And I've always said it even here, we do not have a national agenda, something that pushes people. Because in some of the issues Madam Claudius Cole is referencing, it's really about the attitude, the negative attitude of Sierra Leoneans. When you go to the hospital, I think one of the I know they are very good ones, excellent ones, but I think one of the worst set of people we have, honestly, are nurses. They have a very negative attitude to their work. Despite the challenges, the challenging environment in which they have to operate, they have a very negative attitude to their work. So one thing I think could have been very good is about how the president needs to keep us focused for 2021. How do you bring in, and it involves having a national conversation, having a national dialogue, to have a national agenda, so that even the sweeper on the street knows that I'm sweeping, but I'm contributing to the bigger picture. And whether you're a nurse, or a doctor, or a driver, or a baker, or you're civil society, or you're a politician, there's something, your role, you're contributing to a bigger picture.
All right, let's move on to the biggest conversation, the lands ministry. Many lawyers have tweeted, many Sierra Leoneans on Facebook posted that it's a self-relief that Dr. Dennis Sandi was relieved of that particular ministry. But Keke, I know for sure Femi Claudius Cole is one person that was championing that dismissal. But let's look at the performance of Dennis Sandi in that ministry. Were there reforms? Were there things? Or Dennis Sandi was just this perceived menace in that ministry?
You know, the Ministry of Lands has always been challenging. And sometimes that is the sadness when you go to a ministry, it has a lot of challenges, and then you have to face them head on. Because we also have to remember it was the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Country Planning.
Yes.
But part of the discourse has always been around land. For one reason, because people are very passionate about land. Because for people, it's something that's from generation to generation is passed on. But what I sometimes disagree with in the discourse is people who try to make it an issue as if some of what they had against Dennis was personal. Because at the Ministry of Lands, when he went there were certain things he did. He had his own challenges. So for instance, when the minister went there, the first thing he wanted to do was try to see how you can try to institute a verification and complaints unit, the mechanism around it. And also, what he also did was making sure that, you know, there are processes and procedures. Like I've always said, we can argue on how he discharged those duties. There are people who hold different views. There are people who come and say, oh, it was just a very bad minister, it was the wrong choice. Yeah, we can argue all that. But then what you could not take away from him, he had the passion. He had the passion to do the job. Yes, how we discharge it, we can discuss that. But added to that also, we also saw a ministry where, so for instance, somebody was saying he never had any policy, and then he said to me, oh, well, there was a policy around land reformation. So even the issue about land commission, so as I speak to you now, they had consultation about land commission, customary rights about land, you know, they've done all of that workshop, and they've also done consultations on all of those. And added to the issue about the land, what he also did was to try to demarcate for real estate development, which is the housing aspect of it, you know. So in totality, yes, there were challenges. There were people who felt very personal in the way he discharged his duties. But the way I saw it was, like I've always said, this was somebody who was committed to public service. Yes, we can have arguments about how he discharged his duties. Probably Madam Cletus Cole will tell me, oh, he was a bad minister. He should have gone long since. Yes, I respect that view. But at the end of the day, we also want to now focus on who is coming in. We have Dr. Turat Senesi, somebody who has got wealth of experience in public service, somebody who I think will have the temperament, somebody who is very engaging, somebody who is very consultative, and somebody who will make sure that what, for instance, Minister Sandy, then Minister Sandy has instituted. So, for instance, there were even plans about digitizing the whole ministry, because it's a ministry which is so manual, so many paperwork, you know, and I think making sure that it's go digital, I think, is something important. So it would build on those things which I think would move the ministry forward. And also, it's very innovative. It will try and look at new things to see how, for instance, to make the processes to work faster, to also make the work smoother, without so many complications. But all I appeal for is to make sure that all those who are stakeholders in the land sector will give him the support, because he's somebody, I think, who will give enormous value to that ministry. But for Dennis Sandy, we want to say thank you, and we also wish him well in his new endeavor, because I think, like I said, to serve a country is something everybody pride, and I think he did his bit. We can argue about his legacy, we can argue about how he discharged it, but we want to say thank you to him.
Femi.
We say good riddance to him. And it's actually, I want to go a step further. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Dennis Sandy was nothing but a criminal in the cabinet. My first interaction with him was when he was Minister of Lands prior government. When he demanded a cheat for fuel to do his own job. Myself and my sister took him a cheat for a ridiculous amount of fuel, which I cannot remember whether it was 30 gallons or 50 gallons. After taking it to him, that man had no discipline. There we met him, kept us waiting, and found him in his office eating a plate of rice and cassava leaves, and told us that the cheat was inadequate. We needed to buy him more fuel. I say good riddance to bad rubbish. But I will not celebrate and waste my emotion on Dennis Sandy having left. I will then focus my attention on the person taking over.
Dr. Senesi.
He's quite right. Yesterday, day before yesterday, my neighbor came to me and said, Mami Cole, Lance person don't come back. Oh. One, I've forgotten his name. If not, I would say it right here. The man said, I forget all my original documents, then go submit them at Lance. I said, did he tell you why? Did he give you documentation to say what crime you have committed, why you forget your documents and go land? She said no. So I have promised her that on Wednesday, I will accompany her. So that means Dennis Sandy has sown a bad seed at that ministry. And I want to really pray for the new minister, for God to fill him with wisdom, for that ministry to be restructured, and for the planning segment of it, planning permissions, to go where it belongs in the city council. And for judgment to be reserved for the lawyers and the judges. We do not want to see a ministry that is again functioning as the jury, the executioner, and the judge. We want that ministry to now be a lighting example of how a good ministry functions. I was there on Friday. The only thing that was different about the third floor was the absence of Dr. Sandy. The chaos was the same. There were people sitting everywhere. The same nonsense. So I really want to pray for this new minister. There are many issues. There are issues at the ACC where Dr. Sandy has felt himself too big, too powerful, too important to even come to answer those questions. There are many issues of injustices. Those issues that should be in front of a judge, let the lands minister no longer be a judge. And let those who work for him no longer be a jury. Let us have a ministry now that is run not like a private business.
All right.
And I hope that Dr. Sandy has gone to pasture, that he will not rear his ugly head in any other ministry or department.
Just quickly, before I bring in Valnora, quickly, you spoke about the person taking over, Dr. Turad Senesi. Like I mentioned earlier, until his appointment, he was the minister of, the deputy minister of higher and technical education. And his name has always been around that field, the education sector, from Jala and so forth. So why, I have no power to ask the president, to question the president's decision in his appointment. That is his prerogative. But let me ask you this question. Was he not going to be a better candidate to replace Bakima?
You asked a question I did not answer earlier, which was what Valnora said. What is the requirement for the president to choose people? The president I know and the president I work for, he looks at competence, he also looks at experience, but also he looks at passion for the job. Now, the issue is this. At ministerial level, all you do is to provide political leadership for the ministry. Administratively, you have your peers and you have technical people as well. So I think what would happen is this, and I understand where Madam Cole is coming from. So like I said, there are people who are very emotional about this issue, about the lands and about the minister, the then going minister. But we should give the new minister coming in our full support. Because let me tell you what will happen. Like I said, you have somebody now who is more consultative, somebody who will be engaging, and somebody who will have the temperament to move the ministry forward. And somebody who also build, because what I would not probably subscribe to is when you want to make Minister Dennis as if he did not do anything in the ministry. Because to do that, it will give the impression as if the ministry was only probably empty and nobody was there. There were things he did. So, for instance, I've told you about this issue about the land commission. It's something big. I've also told you.
Toma, there is nothing you can tell me positive about Dr. Sandy, who will wear military garb, go with soldiers to people's land personally,
Madam Cole,
and order people to break things.
Madam Cole.
Let us just say, let us pray for the new person coming. Let us abandon there.
So I was going to respond to that question. So the point I was making is this: there were things it would come and build on. In terms of processes, there were things it would change. It's very innovative, it will bring new things. But at ministerial level, all what you actually do is to make sure what is the president's vision about this sector. you move along with it. And you make sure you carry your technical people along. The permanent secretary, your directors, you carry them along with you. And I think because of his nature, because of his disposition, because of his experience in public service, I think it will add enormous value and get everybody along in the sector. Amen.
Valnora, let me bring you in. Dennis Sandis out, the Deputy Technical Education Minister is now taking over at the Lands Ministry. Is that something positive?
Unfortunately, I'm not too familiar with the incoming minister, but I think I would like to join voices who are saying we want to wish him well, and we hope he comes in with a more moderate and professional temperament. With regards to the former minister, because that's where we like sitting on, and why I'm going there, I don't like being very personal.
Yeah.
But why I need to go there, because there are two things. When I always listen to Kekatoma, he always says this is a responsive government, this is a listening government. And within the first year of former Minister Sandi's appointment, there have been a lot of issues. And he's been there almost for 3 years. So, and then secondly, we have all agreed that the role of the minister is to sort of articulate or implement, or as he put it, carry along the technical staff with the vision of the president, or as articulated in the manifesto. And if he has this sort of temperament and had all these issues, do we want to say what he was exhibiting was the vision of the president, that that's the approach he has to take to do his job? So we are concerned if that's the thing, and that with all the complaints, so you're saying ACC, I know he has cases in court, he has issues at parliament, which he has in some form dismissed. And is it that he was condoned to do these things? I worked with him when he was when he served in the Ministry of Lands. At that time, they were doing the cadastral something in for the western area, and he set up a committee. And I engaged him, and true, he does have a lot of passion in what he does. You know, he pushes people, he would engage and all of that. But the way his manner of interaction then and what I saw now is a bit different. And one thing public officials, people who sit in government, always forget, because I would not say always need to remember. And even as Madam Claudia Sco sits as a politician, we hope if at some point you sit in whatever space, you don't shed off what you are now and become something else. It always happens. They forget that they are servants of the people. And the way you speak to people, the way you interact with people, we are the masters. We put you there. Without our votes, you are not there. And a lot of public officials forget that. They talk down at you, they shout, they do this and all of that. And we see a lot of that in the mannerism of that minister. I mean, we have got a lot of issues. I come from a minority ethnic group that sits in the western area. And we have relatives. I mean, we have been here since the name Freetown was established. So how can you come and question me, not me particularly, but somebody like me, about why I'm owning 100 acres of land? What is that supposed to mean? And you start taking off land from people or saying, oh, they don't have proper documents, when the land was bought in 1950. But your approach would have been, you have your documents, but you need to come and ensure it complies with the current documents we have. Because I know people who bought land in the 1950s or 1960s. We're not going to encroach on land. We're not going to take land that were not rightfully theirs. So his approach was highly unprofessional. His approach was high-handed. He was very rude to people. And we're very disappointed that he was kept on for 3 years. Despite all the complaints and all the issues, no public official should be kept in office with that sort of behavior. We all need to be passionate at what we do. But we have to be respectful, we have to be constructive.
Okay.
So can I just say something, please? I think Madam Coley was having it right. We remember when issues came up, we had a meeting at State House. Do you remember that meeting?
I do.
So when you said that, I always say we are a listening government, we are responsive because we listen. we called the stakeholders.
Yes,
we
we
called,
did.
yes, the Crew community. They went to State House with Dr. Sandy. And
No,
then
Dr. Sandy was not there.
and then President delegated in that meeting. President did because the Honorable Vice President was there. And then we listened to the concerns that you had. Because President, like I've always said, he cares about people who serve in public offices. And when people have frustrations, when they have concerns, when people feel aggrieved, as father of the nation, he should bring people together. We were in that meeting, and then the matter was delegated to the Vice President. Because I only pointed out just to show Valnora that we listened. Now, the issue about you were disappointed that it was kept on for too long, like I said, the decision on who serves in government is a discussion of the president. But I also think that if you were to also talk about some people who, over this period of time, they had their papers at the Ministry of Lands, they wanted land, they applied, and the system that they had thought that it was very good for them, they will give you different testimonies on who Dr. Sandy is. Like I said, the jury is out. People have different opinions. There are people who, throughout his tenure, because obviously they also applied for land, they had their problems sorted out, they'll give you different testimonies. The others will give you their own testimonies. What I want to concentrate on, I understand where you're coming from, is for us to, like Valnora said, like you also said, to pray for the new minister who is coming in.
Yes.
Because we know, and we have a common ground on this, that he has the temperament to move the ministry forward, but he also needs your support as stakeholders. So I like when you said you are going there on Wednesday.
Yes.
But just to know that he has not gone to Parliament yet.
Yes.
So probably by the time you get there, you still meet probably
I
the
will
old
make
staff.
I will make a second visit to meet him.
Okay, so
And
I hope when you get there, you meet him.
And let us do a clarification. We had that meeting with the president, and Keketoma is right. We do have a listening president. He listened. Full stop. He listened.
He passed it on to the Vice President.
And that, my dear, was the end of that. And at that meeting, I spoke. And I said, Mr. President, your minister has gone rogue. He's now a loose cannon. Now, in complaint, we can lay to you. And he listened. I will give him an A for that. And that was it. He listened.
All right.
He gave me the Vice President.
I want to I think, yeah, we're moving forward, but in terms, what informs or what would shape the future is the past. And we really, if the president is not watching this program, you sit with him every day, who do not want any public official with that sort of passion, in quotes. We do not want that, because one thing, I have not had any experience with him on land or anything, really. And I also worked with him when he was the Minister of Gender. But the issue there is, you can have the best policies. We come back to the point, implementation, your interaction. And it's not even about Creoles. It's about most people in the Western area. And we see very little about the country planning. Look at the peninsula. Look at the mountains. Everything has disappeared. We are just building up and creating the scenario for another big catastrophe. There is no planning. You go to Grafton, Allentown, Koso Town, look at Kerry Town, look at all the mountain tops, Bathurst, Charlotte, right at the top of the mountain. Everything is gone. Takugama, every now and then, they've been appealing, you need to keep the forest. So because it enhances tourism. You look at the Grafton Scouts place. My father used to be part of the Scouts, and I do remember going on the hikes up the hills. There's nothing there now. All the land has been sold. And it started before him, but he has accelerated it immensely. We are very worried about what would happen in the next maybe 5-10 years in terms of the environment, in terms of climate change in Sierra Leone.
All right. Let's bring in our viewers and our listeners into the conversation. The number for those of us in Sierra Leone is 025-271-959, 025-271-959, and for those of us out of Sierra Leone, the number is +232-30-622-766, plus 232-30. Good evening, AYV on Sunday. Hello, caller. When you call, you just have to state your name, where you're calling us from, and go straight to your point, please. State your name, where you're calling us from, and straight to your contribution. Sequence Dumbu, I say, is saying, if I go by what you said, Mr. Keketoma, the president's description, meaning President Bill, has failed us just like the lands minister. Sad. Abigail Komanti saying Dr. Sandu was one of the best ministers Sierra Leone has ever produced. Sierra Leoneans are lawless, that's why they didn't like him. Madam Femi, one of Sierra Leone's best politicians. Okay, I'm going to be skipping those complimentary messages. Issa Tomboyoke is saying Madam Cole is making us believe that she is an enemy to the states, or the government, because since I have been watching her on various programs, she has never talked a good thing about this government. Okay, interesting. Good evening, AYV on Sunday.
Hello, this is Umaru calling from Switzerland.
Go ahead, Umaru. What's your take?
Okay. I think the government representative is doing something that is not nice on the part of Sierra Leonean. The former minister, everybody knows that he was very rude to people and he did not behave well in that office. I think the solution is the way forward, not to defend that minister. Everybody knows that the minister was not right. He was doing something that was wrong, and he was indeed tampering with people's property. You know, let them stop defending him and move the country forward. We need progressive minds, not people like Denis Sandi. He was very rude and is not fit to hold any office in Sierra Leone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The number is 025-271959. For those of us in Sierra Leone and out of Sierra Leone, it's +232 30622766. Good evening, AYV on Sunday. The diasporans are very much active tonight. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Samuel.
Go ahead, sir.
Samuel. Hello?
Go ahead, we're getting you.
Yeah, I've been listening to your program. In the first place, I want to tell you thank you for what you do tonight. But I'll let you also be in charge of the program, because this program, we said we begin and listen to them, and then also we encourage them for when they follow what they happen at the program. The way Madam Cole, they address Dr. Sandi, right. They use some kind of statement and at the studio we're not correct for the use. And then realize it is now authority in our society. People then go learn from them and then they go take what things they say. And then number two, the issue of health when I talk about tonight, Samuel. The health system is very, very in danger. We need emergency in health for safe people and life. I get a colleague, a sister or a friend where they work in a hospital. I watch in WhatsApp status. It is not patient them and put on in WhatsApp status. Unknown to the patient, and I made him get for tell and say, this is now abroad they do, and then they sack you straight that day. If it's snapping, everybody is sleeping at the day. So how can you do that? If you don't wait for protect, now you don't turn put them now social media, we're not correct. And then two again, I guess it's sister and Sierra the way it can be suffer from adenoiditis. Then for do an operation somewhere. The doctor will go to the test them for Bukana. This now an operation where they can do within 15 minutes. If they can go back my house and live amicably with his family, you might take a day or two for recover. But these things are not happening. Before that, in the same people for go to Ghana, for go pay $10,000, travel, hotel, and lodging and everything. How are we helping our system? You know, health now get to society. If the health system cannot operate properly for keep the people holding at the nation, then it's a big problem for we.
Thank you.
And please, people want to bring kind of this program. Let them serve as example for people that will be listening to them.
All right.
You're not going to address people the way you feel like saying a dog will get also.
Thank you. All right.
Samina is a family man, a respectable man. You don't make mistakes, and we all human beings and can make mistakes.
Okay.
But let we learn from be civil and respect people.
Noted, sir.
It's time to preach peace.
The number is 025-27195, and I think we're having some technical problem with the local line for our people. But those of us outside of Sierra Leone, you can call on +232, I beg your pardon, 30622766, +232 30622766. Dawda Tawali is saying, Samuel, our educational system is not fit for purpose. We're using yesterday's knowledge to train today's children for tomorrow's technology. Muhammad Ali Ujalo is saying, Mr. Turad promised to serve the people well. His temperament suits the job. Van Diesel Barry, that show would come up many times from now. Issa Tamboyoke is saying, all those that hate Dr. Dennis Sandi were all land grabbers. Muhammad Sheshu Sharif is saying, how would the peninsula not disappear when your brothers are busy encroaching on the reserved places? Dr. Sandi, the soldier minister. Interesting. So many complimenting messages for Dr. for Dr. Sandi here. Good evening, AYV. I think our land ministry status and owners policies are worthless to Sierra Leoneans. That I do not understand. Because just like what Valnora said, our forestry in the hills and mountains were destroyed during the early 90s, and today is worse. Okay. The removal of Dr. Sandi is the best thing that had happened to this government in the last 2 years. There are many other ministers that are underperforming. Okay, you should stop provoking the people of this country by saying this government is the most successive government. You are not in that position to determine that. Aren't you seeing the massive poverty and suffering of our people right across the country? Can't your government see the way citizens are suffering to access transportation, water, and other basic social facilities? Sequence to be again is saying, Alpha, we don't pull the earth system. And Kebikon is saying, we have the third natural harbor in the world. We do not need Guinea. All what the government needs to do is to reduce the tax at the port so that business people will bring in more cheaper items than to rely on Guinea. Mrs. Edwin, the deforestation is one of the many reasons why Sandi remains hateful to many, because people in the name of landowners will do whatever they want with little or no regard for planning. If radical decisions are not taken, we are getting to the worst. I wrote on this situation, especially deforestation, in 2009, Mohammed B. Fakai. Great Dr. Sandi, thanking you for your efforts. Bravo, Doc. Well, okay, so I think what we're going to do, because we're having some technical problems with the local number, we're going to take some local calls as well on the the +232 30622766, and we're going to accommodate 5 more calls because of time. Hello, good evening. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Yeah, hello. This is Mohammed Sharif calling from Sembekan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to talk on the issue of education.
Go ahead.
Actually, what the president did was very good. But where he made the blunder was prioritizing secondary school education than tertiary education. There was the problem. Was where he created the problem. So what he needs to do back is to go to the drawing board to make sure that tertiary education is taken very seriously. Because very plenty money was spent on secondary education than tertiary education. So that was the problem why there was all this strike around the country. So that is my own contribution.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, AYV on Sunday. I'm okay. Please be audible.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Mr. Wise.
Yes, sir.
I want to take the permission to speak.
Go ahead. Just be audible, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. My efforts at 1999. In a moment, you are the call from London. I thank Mr. Sandi so much. The way they execute the job, I appreciate that so much. The same program they are, now therefore they look the kind of caliber people they want to have. Then that woman called Nicole is in a politician. I don't observe her quite a long time now at this program. He's very aggressive for talk. And if they get automatic upsetting for rule, people don't marginalize the treasury to enforce. talk, they talk like politicians for catching the minds of people for dealing for what they say. They can always talk with grievance and grudges and politicians for this. So, I want to motivation in anything public they carry and hide their creed.
Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. Hello, caller. Good evening. Your name and where calling us from?
Hello.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Go ahead, sir. Your name and where calling us from?
Call from Kinto.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yes, name your question for Mr. Keketoma. I want, in terms of dedication, we in the analyze board. Where they say at least the former minister will be making your strike. At least if you know to go to the colleges and watch and see how the students then complain always, or even social media says, because all things nowadays on social media. Then some of that issue where they happen at this country, they're supposed for like then we then are the spokesperson for president. If because the president will go everywhere. But we expect and say them for you go for go see some certain issues there where they happen, at least for let them go give first hand information. But if they don't feel for do that one, they all they feel.
Okay.
We blame the president because
Okay. Thank you. Hello. Hello. Yes, please.
Yes, hello. So now, unfortunately, it's school.
Please be audible a bit.
I've followed the school severally. The way sometimes she addresses ministers of government, I think she's very rude. You guys have to be very, very careful who you in there, and when especially she's talking about people who are not there. At least she needs to be respectful. Who does she think she is?
Okay, I think we have to hold it there as well. Hello, caller. Good evening.
Yeah, Mina Abla, they call from Dozak.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but man, I'm calling you. Nobody not going to credit her because they don't advocate for people that they suffer in our hospital all this while. Most of the people that they talk to, they're not going to go out, for example, and she go there, they see the answer them by then how and then they walk all around. So I please say that the right thing they do for advocate on your behalf. So we all know we could talk to the president at the same time.
All right.
Secondly, with regards to Dr. Sandy, he don't try his best. If it's a good thing he do, we go the partner with the and thank you. Because we know what he don't do to the people there. You understand? We know right now you know where the environment Ministry of Environment go you release and that's okay. We go sell 10 years Kuma value. So we all know that no better plan in order that the country will see where the season one come.
All right.
So if you don't praise the man, he don't do it. Let's go see them. Where the season come, we will go see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So many calls coming in. Sequence is interesting. He's asking Keketoma, he had that Dennis Sandy was a black belt holder. The government needs to unbundle the lands ministry from country planning as two separate ministries, as we currently have an emergency situation around the issue of country planning. So therefore, we need a separate body to look into country planning. Okay, I think I would have to hold the messages there and let's respond to the callers and the messages. I start off with you, Keke.
Thank you very much for those who have called and those also who have sent their text messages. So I think there were 3 issues that they brought up. One has to do with I defending Dr. Dennis Sandy. I'm not defending Dr. Dennis Sandy. All I'm doing is to make sure that for the time that he served, the things that he did, which I think they are commendable, we commend him for. I've always said, to work in the public service, it's something that's always challenging. As you discharge your duty, there are people obviously who have their own opinions. There are people obviously who like you. There are people who would not like you. But for me and for the president, we want to look forward. We want to look at what the new minister that's going to take over, what he's going to come and do. And I hope that all the stakeholders in the lands sector should support him. We appeal for you to support him. But also I think a caller said something about there is too much concentration on lands. I think it's because people are passionate about land. But I think also this new minister, what he would try to do is to make sure we concentrate also on the housing. And that is also, I said about Dr. Dennis Sandy, because as I speak to you, he has demarcated a piece of land for a land housing project. which obviously they are going to start to do. So if anyone tell me that Dr. Sandy was just probably the worst minister or whatever, that's somebody's opinion. I respect that. But then we have to look forward to see what is going to happen with the new minister. Somebody spoke about, I said, this is the most competent government and there's poverty everywhere. Poverty is even in the United States. Poverty is in the UK. Poverty is not going to disappear overnight. In less than 3 years, what we have done, so much tangible things that we've done. Yes, there are challenges with the economy. There are challenges about living standards. But then what you will see is hope. So for instance, even when we had the COVID, we had the Quick Action Economic Recovery Program, which obviously provided for people who are working in the tourism sector, provided for people who are working in other sectors, provided for the disabled. And for the past 3 years that we have been in government, we have got salary increment for teachers, salary increment now we are going to have for the military officers, police officers. We have also provided free tuition and scholarships for children of teachers who have taught for over 10 years. So there are many, many things we've done which I think are commendable. Yes, poverty is everywhere in the world because that is just the nature of poverty. But in Sierra Leone, 3 years, poverty is not going to disappear. But we are taking tangible steps, programs, activities that will make sure that we touch people's lives. Somebody also said about education, that sometimes it is nice for us around the presidency to be moving to institutions. We all do, we always do. And we speak to people. Like I said, there are challenges. There are challenges in hospitals, there are challenges in institutions, there are challenges in universities, challenges everywhere. But these are things which are not manufactured overnight since we came to office. They have been there for the past 11 years, for the past years. But what we want to do is to make sure that you have a president who is committed to making those changes. You have competent people who can deliver on those things. And as we go along, we'll have new people joining the team who will add value to the presidency and execute the vision. So we always appeal, because we are servants of the people. After every 5 years, we come back and we ask for their mandate. And we believe, at the end of the 5 years, when we come back, we'll look at our manifesto and look at all the things that we promised that we've delivered on, and we'll ask for a renewed mandate.
All right. Femi?
I want to thank the callers for their calls and to say that I make no apologies for being passionate. It may be misconstrued as being aggressive, but I am passionate, and I have designated myself that I speak for those who do not have the platform, and I hear a lot of things that go on. So I am not keyed up on listening to what the UNDP has to say and the WHO has to say. I listen to what the people tell me. And even on the issue of Dr. Dennis Sandy, I have had personal interactions with him. And to the caller who said I wasn't appropriate for kids, I simply said good riddance to bad rubbish. I do not believe that I swore or used any foul language. I am a mother myself. But when it comes to certain people disrespecting almost everybody, I have an issue with that. And Keketoma is saying that the president, my issue, another caller is saying that I seem to be sounding like the enemy of the state. I am not. What I am against is people not focusing on the issues that are staring at them in the face. If Dr. Sandy had done all that he had done, and we had had meetings with the president, I feel that even Parliament summoning him, he took that attitude there too. He was the big boy in the room. That he goes to people, and the minister is supposed to be the one facilitating the agenda, as according to what Keketoma is saying. Should the minister himself go with army and police to break people's structures and break people's homes? Some of those people whose homes were broken, and not all of them were people from Creoles. One of those ladies was present at the meeting where they demolished, he personally supervised demolishing all his structures. So I'm not going to focus on him any further. I quite agree with Keketoma in that we now have to look to the new minister, and we have to pray for him and engage him. And from my own perspective, I think he has taken on a very huge, monstrous challenge, which I think is fixable, which I think is doable, and I really do wish him all the best. I really do. Right. And hope he's successful in getting that ministry to shape.
Valnora?
Yeah, at the callers and the text messages, I want to speak generally because I think they are sharing their concerns and they're giving their contributions to our discussion. I think the where we are coming from is, as citizens, you have a government, they've given a manifesto. So it's speaking to the point about we've done A, B, and C. I don't think that is lost. Every government that comes in as much as every government that comes in says the last government did nothing, which I do not agree with, but I know every government does its bit, and this government has been doing its bits. I don't think that is lost. But I think we want to share and want to highlight where there are challenges. And one thing I learned when I was in Ghana once, it was with one of the Uber drivers. And he was asking me, have you seen our airport? Oh, how many? You know, just the conversation. Have you seen our airport? And you know, I was there for a couple of days, but each time I took a different Uber driver, they were always asking me, have you seen our airport? It's a national pride. And that's what I'm saying. Build that national agenda. Give us, and there has to be some leadership. A
sense of direction.
Give us that thing that will get everybody on their toes, because yes, Sierra Leoneans are laid back, they have issues. It's the standard we want as a country. And when he was saying all of that, we got into all the discussions, and he was saying, oh, this, and I said, you are complaining, we have so many challenges. Look at this, look at your road, look at that. And one thing he said to me that I've always said, he said, it's the standard. In as much as we have all of that, we have a standard where as a country we are supposed to be. And I think for me and for most of our civil society colleagues, that's where we are coming from. The things governments do are not lost. And as we say, we focus on the health and the education. Over the years, there have been great decadence that a lot of people have contributed to. Politicians, professionals, the lack of integrity, corruption mainly has contributed to that. But we want the government, we're assuming you don't know. So we are drawing attention to say these are the areas that's affecting those good things that you have done. One thing most of the government, and this government has been doing, the policies, the regulations, the legislations, even the ones that have existed are being revised. They're all good. For the context, they're always good. Where we need to focus on now as a country is the implementation. So when we talk about the lands, it's about the country planning. That has been lost for years. And when you look at the western area, even when you go to Koinadugu, you're approaching Kabbalah, it's a disaster. The high level of deforestation. If you are going to Kono, I've forgotten the area, there is a particular point you go through, all the forest is gone, and it's a hill. It's not a mountain, it's a hill. All the forest is gone. And we hear all the issues of this logging, the timber, the selling, the things that are happening on the side. We need to address that. Implementation. We talk about the hospitals. They should have hospital boards. They have the matron there. Why should a hospital be filthy? Keketoma, I want to appeal, even if the president cannot go. Please go to Connaught tomorrow. So you will see, because it's so bad. Because I know my sister years ago was admitted at Connaught. And I look at that Connaught. I had another sister who was admitted in the intensive care. I had a cousin, you know, over the years. And you can see the gradual decadence. I don't know how I would wake up in the morning and go to that place to say, I'm going to walk, I'm going to sit on this chair and be there for the next 8 hours in that environment. We are not talking about the lack of equipment. We are not talking about the just what a hospital should look like. When we're not even going into that, just the filth alone tells you that's an indicator that there is a big structural problem. So one of the things I think should be the takeaways from this conversation is about implementation. And how do you build that national vision and commitment to motivate people that you should have integrity, you should behave like professionals in terms of how you administer your role, and public officials should be able to, we are talking about how do you appoint people, but there should be people who have administrative and managerial skills, who know how to work with a team, and should be aware that the higher you go into public office, the more criticisms you're going to face, the more backlashes you're going to get. You introduce a policy, nobody's going to like it, or most people will not like it, or some people will not like it. How do you win people on board? How do you bring people on board? These are the sort of skills people need to
Let me
have.
quickly bring you in. I mean, the last appointment we talk about, let's go to where we have a woman now being appointed. I mean, does that maybe, I see Femi smiling already. I mean, what does that speak to the president's commitment of inclusion, especially creating a level playing field for both gender?
Well, I think it's very exciting. But let me also say one thing about what Valnora said. She was talking about there has to be a national agenda. There has to be a national focus. Now, she knows very well that this president, for him, the agenda is human capital development. And in that, you have education, you have healthcare, you have agriculture, diversify the economy. Yes, she's talking about hospitals. We understand all those concerns. And sometimes, some people think government does not listen. We are government, we always do. Now, there's another issue which Madam Cole spoke about people's attitude towards work. So government can do all the things. But for instance, about the issue about drugs. If you have a hospital where the nurse thinks that probably they can take the distribution from government and keep for themselves and sell, that is not something government would have to get microscope on everywhere. But us as citizens, we have to get that national commitment to make sure that, like Valnora said, you work in an environment, it has to be clean. Government is not going to sweep for you where you work in your office, you know. So even people who are in civil society organization, I think they can also support government by doing civic engagement. So people who are working in public services, to see what's their responsibilities, what are their duties, you know, because government is just not the executive. It's about civil society organization, it's about the NGOs, it's about politicians, other political parties. So all of us should come together. But then I end with Dr. Max Kine. Again, I've always said with this president, he's passionate about gender issues and about women empowerment. And for us, we think it is part of his affirmative action to ensure that positions where women are filling for the very first time, it happens under his watch. So we had the former AG, now we are going to have the first person who is going to be a female to be commissioner for NACSA. And her CV is everywhere. She's competent. So that is the story of this government. We have people who are very competent to handle public offices. She's worked before as a poverty expert from NCRRR, coming now as commissioner. So we think, and the president believes, that that should be an inspiration to women, to young girls, that they can look at her and say, okay, I want to emulate her for what she has done. And we believe that should also make sure that all of us are carried along with the president's agenda. But just not only that, we should also celebrate Justice Miata Maria Samba,
yes, please,
you know, which obviously has been elected as an ICC judge. You know, these are things I know Madam Cole will say, oh, the statistics, the numbers, we don't want to hear this. But all of this, what they do, like Valnora was saying, they make us have a different standard. So when you see our country, you talk about women empowerment, you talk about the ICC judge, you talk about women empowerment, you talk about the NACSA commissioner, you know. So yes, there are things we can do more to empower more women, appoint more women in positions.
Okay.
But we think we are making concrete and affirmative action to move the process forward in gender empowerment. Yeah, we will do more.
Okay. Yes.
That's what I said.
Go ahead.
We need to do more because one good thing, though, I think the women across the board, they are really doing their job. We can commend them. The government has been able to really pick up good crops to do the right thing. And I'm not saying it because you say we need to commend anybody. I'm saying it because it's the fact. That's the fact. But we still do not have a level playing field. And I think we still have, I mean, I've been in discussions with certain people, and they are saying, oh, they keep on asking, and we are saying they keep on asking, where are the women? The women are there. But if you're shaking your head, where are they?
Because you don't want political appointment.
Just quickly, because I was going to say,
so
when the president took over in 2018,
Salwako, all these, what do they call them, parastatals, how many of them are run by women? I think you have like 25 or 30
But
of them.
some women don't. Valora, you know, some women don't want political appointments, and you know.
I challenge Fatu Taki on that.
It's a comfortable excuse, Valora. Do not even answer.
No, she knows what I'm talking about.
I challenge Fatu Taki on that. I knew of women who were approached to serve in the government. They turned down.
They turned it down.
So, but let's go to disappointment. Let's go to disappointment. The first women commissioner at NACSA. You have the ICC judge now. Do you think? I mean, these actions, they inspire young women to dream a little bigger, to see that, oh, we can be there. I mean, is this not something inspiring?
And, you know, I speak on the judge.
Yeah.
And before I ever met her, I went to her court. And I listened to her adjudicate a number of cases. And I thought, there are amazing women here in the judiciary. That they could really tap into. She is an amazing woman. And I am very, very proud of her for scoring that position. And as Valnora says, there are more women. And we now have a board. There are boards where you can approach the organizations that you can approach to have lists. We have the women who are registered, who are competent, who are ready, willing, and able to serve. So please do not ask where are the women. You can even go to 50-50 and they can give you the list of the women. Women on boards are there.
But the good thing on the women on boards thing, it's been effective.
It is.
Because it's been used as a means to get women. So that's why I'm saying there needs to be more women across the country, because that's another thing. All the women are not in Freetown. We want to see appointments from Port Loko, from Kailaun, from Kenema. They are there. Find them.
And I'll assure you, our president is a he for she champion.
Campaigner. Yeah.
And a campaigner. And we'll make sure, yes, we'll set a very high standard for women in terms of empowering women, in terms of appointing women. We'll do more. And hopefully, in the coming years, we'll do more.
We'll see more women.
Just quickly as we round up, how soon will the next list be published?
Oh, I wish I knew. That is not my job. Otherwise, I get fired on TV. When the president is pleased, and then I'll come. I'll come and talk.
All right,
about
thank you. Thank you very much, Keke. Because I asked that question because there's a lot of people saying, oh, if we were to go into the other sectors like the finance sector, we're going to fire a lot of people. But that's the prerogative of the president. Thank you very much, Yusuf Kokotoma Sandi, press secretary and presidential spokesman, Femi Claudio School, 2018 presidential candidate and chairperson for the Unity Party. Thank you very much, Valnoa Edwin, a good governance campaigner, former executive director for Campaign for Good Governance. It's been a pleasure talking to all three of you, gentlemen and ladies. That's all we have time for in tonight's program. Many thanks to our panelists for giving us their time, and to you, our lovely audience, thank you for staying with us and participating in the program. Fresh edition next week, same time here on your home of all things credible, factual, and all times balanced news. Coming up after this is the AYV Primetime News. The show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Weisbangua, and don't forget, a repeat of this edition comes up on Thursday at 4 p.m. Take care of yourself and stay blessed.